Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrofil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabbihi ajma'in. Jazakallah to Ustaz Faris. I have one announcement before we begin. One of our brothers, Abu Faizal, is going to undergo one surgery this morning, 11 o'clock. I just met Aisha just now. To his kneecap, right? There is something wrong with his kneecap. Yeah. So let us make dua that Allah will make everything easy for them. Yeah, inshallah. Okay. Now inshallah we will continue our discussion on akhlaq, because last week we actually discussed about something else. Okay, we discussed on the topic of Valentine's Day. Okay, the historical part of Valentine's Day. Now inshallah we will continue discussion on the dimension of akhlaq. Yeah. Alright. So as we learned before, okay, Islam, when we speak about akhlaq, akhlaq is a very essential part of our religion, Islam. Okay. So without good akhlaq, okay, then our religion will not be completed. And there is actually one hadith of the Prophet SAW. The Prophet say your iman is not going to be complete unless you can practice good akhlaq among you and your brothers, and also between you and Allah. Okay. So whenever we speak about dimension of akhlaq, okay, the purpose of learning the dimension of akhlaq, so we can see actually to whom we should practice good akhlaq. Okay, because sometimes whenever we discuss about akhlaq, people always have in mind, I should only show good akhlaq to my fellow Muslim, or to my fellow brothers and sisters, or to my colleagues, for example. Okay, whereas whenever we learn akhlaq, for example, we will come to know that the first dimension of akhlaq is actually akhlaq towards the Creator. Okay, akhlaq towards Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. Okay, alright. In Islam, I just discussed about this just now in Parliament with Sister Aina. Okay, I say in Islam, it's not just about doing the right things. Okay, but it is also about doing things right. Can you see the difference? Okay, because sometimes we might be doing the right thing, but the way of doing it is not right. At the same time, we might do something right, but we are not doing the right things. So these two things must be complementary to each other. We must do the right thing at the same time. We must do the right thing in the right way. Let's say for example, there is someone that we need to correct. Okay, for example, we need to correct someone, right? We need to give advice to someone. Okay, which is actually a good thing. Because in Islam, the Prophet SAW mentioned in the hadith, whenever you see a munkar, a maksiat, you must try to stop the maksiat, using three ways, in 3 ways. Okay, either by using your hand, or by using your tongue, or by using your heart. Okay, so let's say for example, you want to correct someone with your tongue to give advice. Okay, which is actually correct, it is right. But remember, the way of doing it must be right as well. Okay, so that's why, for example, if you look at in Quran, okay, Allah basically give us guideline on how to do da'wah. Okay, and Allah said in the Quran, "A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim, ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah." If you want to invite others to the way of Allah, then the first method is always with wisdom, bil hikmah. Okay, and if you look at the interpretation of the ulama say bil hikmah means to use soft words. You need to say, you cannot use harsh words. You cannot say, man, you are stupid, you will go to hell. You don't use that kind of language, for example. Okay, then you must speak nicely. And not just that, wisdom also means to use the right and proper words to the right and proper audience. Let's say, for example, if you are talking to children, then you need to speak the language of children. If you speak to old people, for example, then you need to speak their language. Okay, to suit the understanding of the audience. Alright? And the second method of da'wah, according to Quran, is wal mau'izatil hasanah, is to give good advice. How to give good advice? Some ulama say, whenever you want to give advice or you want to correct someone, it is always good not to tell him directly. It is always better actually to use analogy or story. Right? So if you want to correct someone, you can use story or you can use analogy. Let's say, for example, you want to speak, you want to advise a kid, for example, or you want to advise children not to tell lies. So instead of saying don't tell lies, maybe you can use story. The story of shepherd with the tiger, you know that story, right? The shepherd, the boy called the villagers, the wolf, sorry, okay? Called the villagers saying that there is a wolf trying to eat all his sheep, and then he was telling lie actually and so on. And then later on you can give the lesson. Okay? If you look at Al-Quran, for example, there is one surah in the Quran, it is called Al-Qasas. Al-Qasas is the plural or jama' of Al-Qisah. Qisah means story. We use the word Qisah in Malay. Alright? And the third method used by given by the Quran to give da'wah is wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. Okay, if you cannot use the first two methods, you have used your wisdom, but it didn't work. You have also used your good advice, but it didn't work as well. So the last method is you can go into a debate, or you can present your argument. But Al-Quran says your argument must be ahsan, a good and concrete argument. Yeah, which means you need some skills because not everybody can do debate, for example. Yeah? Alright, not everybody can argue, for example. Alright? Okay, so again, it is not just about doing the right things, it's also about doing things right. Yeah? Alright. So akhlak towards Creator, Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. Okay, the relationship between human being and Allah is of the relationship between slave and their masters. This is very, very well known in Islam. We are the slave of Allah. We are not even servant, because servant means someone who serve and get paid. Of course we get paid, but Allah didn't pay us, but Allah give us favors and bounties. Okay, but still we are actually the slave of Allah. And the word is al-abdu. Okay? It is also mentioned in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. Okay, Allah said, I have not created the genie and mankind except to worship me. And Allah used the word ya'budun, coming from the word abada, which means you are the slave of Allah. Okay? And remember, I have given one analogy before. Yeah? If we travel back to the ancient Egypt, in ancient Egypt time there were many slaves before. Yeah? So if you go there, for example, if you travel back to time and you met like one slave, for example, and you try to interview this slave. Yeah? You ask the slave, as a slave, what do you do? And the slave will say, I do what my master asked me to do. Yeah? So that's how a slave lives his life. So we call ourselves as the slave of Allah. So if I ask you, as a slave of Allah, what do? We do what Allah asks us to do. And whenever we say I do what Allah asked me to do, then it is not just about worshipping. It's not just about salat, for example. It's about living our life in the worship or in the submission towards our master. The whole life. Okay? And that's why whenever we speak about ibadah in Islam is not just limited to salat, zakat and so on. There are two types of ibadah in Islam. Number one, we call it the specific ibadah. Okay, ibadah al-khasah. Ibadah al-khasah basically includes 5 pillars of Islam. Whenever you do syahadah, you do salat, you do fasting, you do zakat, for example, and also hajj. And then these are all considered as ibadah. Okay, but the second type of ibadah is ibadah al-amal, the general ibadah. Okay, and it includes all other good activities that we can do in our life. Eating, for example, can we consider that as ibadah? Yes. But it will need several prerequisites first. Let's say, for example, before you eat, make sure you recite doa and Bismillah, for example. Okay, why Bismillah? Because Bismillah means in the name of Allah. So you do it for the sake of Allah. Okay, so that's why in Islam, whatever you do, always start with Bismillah. Okay, because Bismillah is actually, what we call it, an action of renewing our intention. Because sometimes our intention can get deviated. For example, attending the usrah. Why do we attend usrah? I don't want to answer that, but you can answer that on your own. Yeah. But let's say, for example, if you think you are deviated, if you think your intention get deviated already, what you can do, you can always renew your intention. So before you step, for example, into the hall, and then you should recite Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, so that will help you to renew your intention. Alright? Okay. So how do we practice akhlaq towards Allah? That will be the question. Okay? So if you look at here, this part, yeah. Practicing good akhlaq towards Allah is done by carrying out all of His commands sincerely and living life according to His will. So how do we practice good akhlaq to Allah? Can you see that?
Yes. Must be.
Okay. So how to practice good akhlaq towards Allah? Number one, you should practice all of His commands. And not just to practice His command. When we say to practice in command, and then you must avoid His prohibition. Okay? You know, sometimes there are Muslims who only practice the command of Allah, but they forget to avoid the prohibition of Allah. You know, if you learn mantik in Islam, logic in Islam, there is one method of thinking. Okay, they call it mafhum mukhalafah. Have you heard this? It is like flipping a coin, or what we call, looking at another side of coin. You know, coin has two sides, right? So whenever you look at one side, you have to follow the commandment of Allah. So the other side would be to avoid His prohibition. Alright? So not just you practice solat, for example, but you don't what? You don't take riba, for example. Yeah? And then not just to perform solat, but you don't waste time, for example. Yeah? Alright. And not just that, you must lead your life according to His will. This is basically the essence of Islam. Okay, there is one ayat in the Quran, Allah mentioned, A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim, udkhulu fi silmi kafah. What does it mean? Embrace Islam in totality. So there is only one type of Muslim, which is a full-time Muslim. There is no such thing as part-time. There is no such thing as, I don't know what do you call that, okay? But it is always full-time. Because Allah said, embrace Islam in totality. Okay, once you acknowledge that you are a Muslim, then your whole life should be shaped by Islam. Yeah? And that's why if you refer to dictionary, what is the meaning of religion? Yeah? One of the many meanings of religion is actually something that influences your life. That's the meaning of religion. Look at, for example, in Islam, all Muslim, you must be awake at least by 7 a.m. in the morning. You must be awake already. Why? Because there is solat subuh. If you are awake later than that, then there is a problem. Yeah, that's how Islam influences your life. By 7, you must be awake. Okay? And if you look at from the perspective of sociology, for example, getting awake early in the morning, if you live in KL, for example, waking up early in the morning is really practical. Because you can avoid traffic jam, you can get time to take breakfast and so on. It's really practical. Okay? In kampung also it is practical. Why? Because people in kampung sometimes they do what? They go to their kebun and so on, right? Okay? So they need to be awake early. Alright? Okay, any questions so far? Okay, and another point that you must remember, okay? It must be remembered that in Islam, the coverage of religion is not merely restricted to the performance of religious rites and ritual. It includes all other remaining aspects of life, such as books and etc. Okay? So if you acknowledge yourself, if we acknowledge ourselves as Muslims, then Islam must be the only influence in our life. And that will influence the way we think as well. Okay? In Islam, there are 4 levels of thinking. You know, if you want to make decision, there are 4 steps that you need to do. Did I mention to you already these 4 steps? No. Okay. The first step, they call it fitrah. Yeah? Fitrah, you know fitrah, right? Fitrah is basically our nature. Okay? So let's say for example our nature is, can I say eating, for example, eating. So we know that eating is basically our nature. So whenever we see food, you know that you have to decide to eat whenever you feel hungry, for example. Okay? And the second level of thinking is called the feeling and senses. So when you feel hungry, then you know you must decide to eat. And the third level of thinking is your akal. Okay? Let's say for example, you are hungry. Your feeling and senses are telling you are hungry. And your fitrah is telling you need to eat. And then you see a food, right? But it doesn't belong to you. You ask your akal, can I take that food? You ask your intellect. Some intellect will say yes, go on, take it. Because we have some corrupted intellect. But some intellect will say no. So how do you decide? There is another level, they call it the level of religion. So you ask your religion, what does Islam say about taking people's food without permission? It is haram. So you shouldn't do it. Although your feeling and senses are telling you to take it, although your fitrah is telling you to take it, although your akal is telling you to take it. But religion should overrule all. That's how you make decision. Right? Okay. Any question? No. Okay. And that's why Islam is not a religion, but Islam is a deen. And what is deen? Deen means the way of life. Yeah? It's not just merely a religion. Yeah? Alright. Any question? No. Okay. The second dimension of akhlaq is called akhlaq towards fellow human being. Okay? You know, one of the characteristics of Islam is called balance. Okay? So, you must be balanced. You cannot be extreme and you cannot be deficient. But you must be in the middle, balance. Which means, if you practice good akhlaq only towards Allah, it is not enough for you to be a good Muslim. It must be balanced with the akhlaq towards fellow human being. That's why, if a Muslim only focus on ibadah towards Allah, but at the same time he treat people, badly, then he is still not a good Muslim. At the same time, if someone is really good to people, but at the same time do not perform ibadah towards Allah, that person is still not a good Muslim. So it must be balanced. Okay? But the most important one is the akhlaq towards Allah. Okay? And ulama say if you really practice ibadah or akhlaq towards Allah properly, then insyaAllah the akhlaq towards human being will come naturally. Yeah? Alright. So the second dimension of akhlaq in Islam is to practice it towards the fellow human. This is to be done by fulfilling their due rights and avoiding violating it. Now, when we speak about right, of course, it is very philosophical in nature. Right is very what we call it. The interpretation is very wide. Okay? But remember, rights in Islam is what? Is as long as it doesn't violate the rights of Allah. We have right, but at the same time, it is Allah's right for us not to violate His right. Understand? Okay, you cannot violate Allah's right. When we talk, for example, about the issue of what we call it, homosexuality. Yeah, people are saying my body, my right. There is one woman in Malaysia, they call it sexuality merdeka. You heard this?
Yes.
Yeah. What is their motto? They call it our body, our right. Yeah? Which is basically right. Yelah, you have right on your body. But in Islam, our right will stop whenever it violates the rights of Allah. Because the right of Allah, Allah did not create man to be married to another man. So Allah did not create woman to be married to another woman. Okay, so our rights stop when it violates the rights of Allah. Okay, so our right is not really absolute. Okay, if you practice absolute right, then the world will be in trouble. Can you imagine if everybody has absolute right? And then the world will be in trouble. Yeah? Alright. Any question? Okay. Akhlak towards fellow human also is important in order to ensure the peace in our society. Yes? What we call it? Cannot remember. Okay. One of characteristic of Islam, okay, is basically to provide the sense of accountability towards Allah. You know what is accountability? We call it kebertanggungjawaban. Okay, accountability means when you die and if you do something, Allah will, later on you will be answerable to Allah. We call it accountability. Okay, and without the sense of accountability, people basically will do just whatever they want. Okay, the problem with our law. Okay, we have man-made law, right? The problem with man-made law, not just sometimes it is not just, but man-made law is what? It's something that is not feared by people. People, they are not fear of law, but they are fear of the authority. When the policeman is not around, many drivers will not even put on the seatbelt. That's normal. So we are not afraid of law. We are afraid of the authority. And in Islam, this is basically what we are taught. We are taught in Islam that Allah is looking at us all the time. So there is always authority around you 24/7. So, will you be there to violate the law of Allah? No. Okay? There was one, I watched news, I think last month. Okay? The New York PD, New York Police Department, they have decided to put on the body camera on every police officer. Okay, in order to avoid what they call as
Being accused of
the police will misuse the power or something. Okay? What do they call it? Police harassment. Yeah? To avoid the police harassment. Okay, so that's why they put the camera. And they say when they put the camera, they have reduced the police harassment by 99%. Okay, and according to the chief of NYPD, they said this is because of the sense of, this is because the officer know that they are being watched. See? So when you believe that Allah is watching you all the time, you will not do bad things. It is as simple as that. Okay? Because the problem with man-made law, we don't fear, or we are not afraid of the law, we are afraid of the authority. That's the problem. Because we know sometimes, somehow we can avoid authority. Yeah? Alright. Any question? Okay. Okay, it's very long. Okay. Alright. The third dimension of akhlak is akhlak towards other creation. Okay, so akhlak is not just towards human beings, but also towards other creation. This is very interesting. Okay. So Allah mentioned in the Quran, for example, Surah Al-Anbiya, and we have sent you, O Muhammad, not but a mercy for all creatures. Okay, for all creatures, not just for human. Okay, and I will quote here some of the hadiths. Okay, Prophet said, if someone kills a sparrow for fun, the sparrow will cry out on the day of judgment, "Oh Lord, that person killed me in vain. He did not kill me for any useful purpose." So you cannot just simply kill animal, not just sparrow. Yeah. Okay, and there is also another hadith: whoever kills a sparrow or anything bigger than that without a just cause, Allah will hold him accountable on the day of judgment. And then the listener asked, "O Messenger of Allah, what is a just cause?" And then he replied that he will kill it to eat, not simply to chop off its head and then throw it away. Yeah? Alright. And then there is also another hadith here. Yeah? Fear Allah in your treatment of animals. Yeah? Alright.
Except for lizard.
Except for the lizard, yeah. There is one specific hadith for that. Yeah? And not just lizard, and also this scorpion and also snake. Yeah, the venomous animals. Yeah. And this is also this one. Who has distressed this bird by? Okay, let's see here. Okay, Muhammad's companion, Prophet Muhammad companions narrates. Yeah. We were on a journey, and during the Prophet's absence, we saw a bird with its 2 chicks. Yeah, and then we took them. The mother bird was circling above us in the air, beating its wing in grief. When Prophet Muhammad SAW returned, he said, "Who has distressed this bird by taking its chick? Return them to her." Yeah, alright. And there are also many other hadiths. Okay, and why this happened? If you look at here, in pre-Islamic time, the pagan superstition and polytheistic practices included acts of torture and cruelty to animals. Islam condemned this and put a stop to all such practices. Because sometimes in pagan ritual, what they do is that they sacrifice animal, and the way they sacrifice animal sometimes was very cruel. And they did it not to eat it, but they did it just to sacrifice to their gods. Yeah. Alright. Okay, and the last one. Okay, the last dimension of Muhammad is akhlak oneself. So not just you must practice good akhlak to Allah, to other people, to animals, but you must practice good akhlak towards yourself. Yeah, so how to do it? The final dimension of akhlak is to practice it towards oneself. It is implemented by fulfilling and giving its needs and rights. So you must fulfill your own need and right. Okay? For example, your right to do ibadah, okay? The right to get good food, the right to get good rest, for example, because your body needs that. Okay? Alright. And then Muslim must perform justice even to their own self. We must preserve the necessity and rights of our body, soul, emotion and intellect. Okay, if you read Al-Quran, in Islam we believe that human being is composed of three elements. The first element is our physical element, which is from soil. Okay, so you must give justice to your body, to your physical element. The second element is your soul. And Allah mentioned in Quran, "Wa nafakhtu fihi min ruhi." Okay, Allah said, "I blow my soul, my spirit into Adam." So we have the spirit. Okay, so you must give your soul and your spirit its right as well. And then the last one is your intellect. Intellect will include emotion as well. Okay, so preserve the right of your emotion. Don't be stressed out, for example, for due to wrong reason. Okay, something big, it can happen to us, right? Okay, and practicing good akhlak to oneself can sometimes be the hardest dimension to be